Was Joe Biden a hero for getting Britney Griner back, or did he blow it in the negotiations? Let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation. Let's bring in Harley Lippman. He's going to help us sort this out. Geopolitical analyst, Sky News Arabia contributor, and an Abraham Accords negotiator. So Harley, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No problem. All right, so I have mixed feelings about the deal, but I'm curious what you think. Let's start there. Good deal, bad deal?
Well, mixed feelings is a perfect way to start. I don't even know if you could describe it as a good or bad deal. I would avoid those terms. I think you, even though I'm saying that, I'm actually going to now contradict what I said. You can say it's a bad deal on one level, which is that this could encourage Russia or other countries to seize Americans, to use them as leverage to gain some advantage with the United States, in this case, a prisoner exchange. So this is the bad news. It's a very unequal exchange. You have a basketball player who had a little residue of marijuana and was arrested and sentenced to something like 13 years in prison in Russia, hard time, if you will. And the United States has in jail someone who's characterized as a merchant of death. And during the days when we were looking for Osama bin Laden, because he was the #1 on the list of world terrorists, #2 was this guy, Victor Bout. So he's a really, really bad guy. And that we let him go back to Russia was obviously a very unequal exchange and could inspire Putin and other bad actors and rogue nations to use this tactic to get other prisoner exchanges.
Okay, so by the way, it was 9 years that Britney Griner got. Obviously trumped up charges, basically became a political prisoner in Russia. So before I weigh in, what did you think was the good side of the deal? And after that, tell us, so overall, would you have done it?
All right, the good side of the deal is that on a humanitarian level, you got an American citizen who was unfairly convicted, as you said, out of jail and back in the arms of her loved ones. So that's one reason why it's a good deal. The second reason is it's a win for Black women in America. Here was someone who was prioritized. The Biden administration made major efforts to get her out, and they succeeded. And I think it sends a really strong message to that community in a positive way. That's the good news.
And so, Harley, would you have done the deal or no?
Wow, what a great question. I think I would have. I don't know. I don't think I would have done the deal the way it was done. No, I don't think so. I think I would have really made sure that we got out the other American, an ex-Marine who's been in jail for 4 years now, and who is innocent. Because if the administration goes out of its way to say that he's not a spy, it's just not true, then that's pretty reliable. If he was a spy, the administration would most likely say nothing. But when they're denying that he was engaged in espionage, that's considered in the intelligence community and the diplomatic community as a pretty clear statement that he is an innocent man.
Yeah, so I think that when we go to do critique, it has to be constructive and it has to be honest. So I think that most of the folks that are doing a critique of Biden these days are more on the dishonest side, because everybody was saying, get Britney Griner home. I can't believe he hasn't gotten Britney Griner home. He gets her home and then they turn around the next day and or that same day and go, oh, can you believe he brought her home? It was a bad deal, he's terrible, right? So that's the politics of it. But putting that aside, Harley, I think I agree with you. I don't think that I would have done the deal. And look, also being fair to Biden, he did, of course, try to get Whalen and Griner back and made several offers to Russia, and Russia did reject those offers. And then finally, Russia said, hey, you know what, just Griner for Victor Bout. And so I'm really worried about the precedent that we set, because this was as close to a nothing charge as you can get. So Harley, I don't know, I'd be worried. I'd be worried about going to a lot of countries. Honestly, I'd be worried about going to the Gulf countries. I'm an ex-Muslim, and so they could consider me an apostate and just make up something. And then
That's true.
And then we got to, do trades. And so this is pretty dangerous stuff. But at the same time, Biden wasn't a damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. Do you agree with that?
Yes. Yeah, I agree. It's a tough position to be in. And those negotiations must have been very difficult, opaque, and murky, and really would have been fascinating to get a glimpse into what took place there. But I think what's interesting is understanding Putin's strategy, because we're seeing it in Ukraine. And his strategy is to punch you in the face and then say, oh, okay, do you want to negotiate now? And the United States takes the punch and goes, well, it looks like you really don't want to negotiate, given that you just punched me in the face. So that's the way Putin is. And it just gives him another victory, even though we're trying to do everything to pull him out of Ukraine. Nevertheless, here's a case where indirectly he scores a win over Biden, and it's something he badly needed in Russia. So it enhances his stature there, which is something we don't like. I think what's interesting is, why did Russia try so hard to get this guy, Victor Bout, out of prison for the last 10 years? Because they've been really, and that's why when they arrested Britney, that was their leverage, and it worked. And that's the disturbing side of it. But what's interesting is, why would they go out of their way and make this a priority for them? And I think there are three reasons. I think one is the fact that he probably had worked for the intelligence service, the FSB in Russia. So Putin wants to send a signal to his agents that he's going to stand by them, and he'll do everything possible to get them out of prison if they're arrested, and to protect them. And that's an important message, and that goes to his core values. I think that's one. I think also the reason why he was a priority for Russia is that they wanted to placate the rightist elements in Russia, people that are to the right of Putin, who are critical that Putin's not doing enough to win the war. So they've been very critical of Putin, and that surprised a lot of people that you have that in Russia. So I think, one, he wanted to placate the right wing that has been critical of him. That's the second reason. And I think the third reason is, I think they're looking for him to help them get weapons to fight the Ukrainians and shore up Russia's military in Europe. I think that the Russian military has suffered some humiliating setbacks. And I think that here they're seeing that this is a guy who was incredibly effective and successful. Again, to make the #2 most wanted list in the world, you have to be a pretty bad dude, if you will, right? So that's what's going on. And I think that, we have to understand that to know why this was a priority for the Russian government.
Yeah, and be careful of Russians making deals. They've done prisoner swaps before with the West recently under Putin, and one of the spies that they returned to the West, they then poisoned in the United Kingdom. So, I mean, I don't think they'll do that to Britney because she wasn't a spy or anything like that. But Putin, in a sense, goes back on these deals all the time. So that leads to this question. So Harley, it's a mixed bag for America, win some, lose some, but it's not at all a mixed bag for the Russians, right? This is a pure, complete win. They lose nothing. It was just a rando basketball player they'd arrested for no reason, and they get the huge upside of a weapons dealer that they were loyal to and need the help of right now, as you just explained.
Right, and in fairness to Biden, it was very clear what the deal was. Either you take this deal or there's nothing. Now, what we've come to discover is that the American ex-Marine could have been released if the United States had released another Russian who is apparently a colonel in the Russian intelligence service, the FSB, and who was found guilty in a German court of assassinating an opposition leader from Russia, someone who was active in fighting for Chechnya against Russia. So this guy followed this Russian, this Chechnya commander on a bicycle, followed him into a park, took out a Glock pistol and assassinated him and killed him, and was subsequently arrested went to court and was found guilty. So they are really trying to get him out of jail. That was their goal. So they thought that they could leverage our desire to get Paul, the American ex-Marine, out by making that exchange. And the United States stood its ground and said, this guy is such a bad guy. We're not going to exchange him for that. We have to draw the line somewhere. So that could be debated too, but that's what took place behind the scenes.
So one more thing, Harley. So I think you ought to have your head examined if you're going to go to visit Russia these days, right? Especially if you're an American. Your chance of getting kidnapped is like 93%. Okay, I'm exaggerating, but you're really taking your life. Yeah, you're taking your life into your own hands there. So I'm curious why the Biden administration, is there a reason why they wouldn't use that as a leverage point in the negotiations? Look, if you don't do a deal that includes Whelan, all of the West and our allies are going to do a giant blitzkrieg on your tourism industry and say, hey, if you go to Russia, you're going to get kidnapped, you're going to get kidnapped, you're going to get kidnapped. That actually could do billions of dollars in damage, particularly to Russian oligarchs. Is that a crazy thought by me that doesn't make sense, or could they have done something?
Not a crazy thought. No, I think that's a great point. And whether it's that or some other strategy that they could have used, probably would have given us a better outcome. But the problem is, as I mentioned earlier, we don't really know what went on behind the scenes. These are very unusual negotiations. So who knows what the United States said to Russia? But you're probably right. I suspect that the Biden administration was not going to escalate to the level that they probably needed to get this ex-Marine out of Russian prison. It's really an outrage that we have this guy there, who, especially given he's innocent. If you're a spy, there are consequences, even though we want to get our spies out. And back in the day, it would be a professional for a professional. In the days of the Cold War in the Soviet Union, we'd have a spy, they'd have a spy, we'd make an exchange. Here, everything has changed now. Now they're going to kidnap an ordinary American. So as you said, everybody's at risk. And especially if you travel, be really careful about what you take with you, because laws in other countries can be quite draconian, and you could end up in hard labor in jail in a really dangerous, scary place. So I would give that advice to anybody traveling, in fact, anywhere outside the United States, to be really mindful of watching what they bring and be ultra careful, making sure they're not in violation of another country's laws.
Yeah, 100%. All right, Harley Lippman, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.